I'm going to go ahead and call this August 19th, 2024 meeting of Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully we have some folks joining us remotely via Teams as well. Just for the record, Councilor Caltabiano is joining us remotely, as well as Attorney Jacobs. Welcome to you both. We will start with our pledge. Rachel, do you mind leading us, please? Thanks very much, Rachel. We'll move on to our third item on the agenda, which is a presentation from Whitefish Legacy Partners for a sidewalk on Highway 93 North. Welcome. Thank you.
So my name is Jed Sankar-Gorton. I'm Program Director at Whitefish Legacy Partners. Thanks for having me today. So we do have this image. I'm here to talk about MDT's Highway 93 West corridor realignment project that is slated to go out to bid in a few months and then the work to happen in 2025. There is this little piece of the puzzle out there near Skiles Lane, near the East Spencer state land access that I want you, council, to please consider a request. So as designed, there is a shared use path which currently goes out to Michael's. It's on the north side of the road, the Quonset hut out there. The design has that route going all the way out to Twin Bridges Trailhead, which is great for the community. Due to some right-of-way issues that MDT had with private landowners there, the shared use path will segue from the north side of the road to the south side of the road in a tunnel, which will be kind of fun. About 1,500 feet short of Skiles Lane. The shared use path will then continue to Twin Bridges, but we are left with this, quarter mile, 1,500 foot gap where there will be no sidewalk. You'll be essentially walking on the side of the road. And so we're going to be bringing users out there and just leaving them a little bit short of Skiles Lane. And Legacy Partners in the city, we are also planning further Whitefish Trail expansion in that area. So we have the Skiles Trailhead, but we have put a proposal to the DNRC in the queue to be analyzed for Spencer Mountain expansion. That's come before council last year. And so there is a future trailhead planned in the East Spencer area as well. So we think there are going to be a lot of people taking advantage of this shared use path, and we're excited about that. A lot of opportunity, but as a result, we also think that there are some significant safety concerns that users will experience should they either opt to continue on the north side of the road to get to Skiles or to get to the Sportsman's access. There's a FWP fishing access right there, or maybe their homes are up there. They could end up walking quarter mile on the side of the highway, or maybe they'll even be trying to cross kind of straight from the shared use path on the south side to Skiles Lane. So we are requesting that the city, and we've worked with Public Works on this, requesting that the city will sign off on a letter that would go to MDT asking that they look more closely at the design options for a 5-foot path. Shared use is a certain width. There may not be that width due to the right-of-way issues, but we have an understanding that there is space for perhaps a 5-foot path. So asking that MDT look at these safety implications, review their designs, hypothetically add in a sidewalk that would be built next year, but at a minimum not build a road where a sidewalk couldn't go in someday. Legacy Partners, with our kind of added involvement out there, we want to be a part of the solution in funding the project if needed, looking at the maintenance down the road. Obviously, it's not as though we work with sidewalks very often, but it's proximity to multiple trailheads. It kind of makes sense for us to be a part of this, and we think it's worth the community's time.
Jed?
Just
Steve.
a quick one. I would assume that they're going to be widening the road there too? Is it possible
Some.
to just continue the asphalt a little bit wider there? Is that a possibility?
Yes, so there will be wider shoulders. My understanding is that the lanes won't necessarily be wider. There will not be a turning lane at East Spencer, but the shoulders will be wider. So sure, that is something to consider. The raise, it's still going to be 60 miles an hour. Having a sidewalk still feels like the safest option.
And there's no way to get path is a tunnel going
Yeah, there in the packet there are some estimates that Craig Workman put together. There's a slightly misleading there. The retaining wall is something that they may, via their engineering work, determine that they need to build. We don't necessarily need to add any more retaining wall to the project. So when you look at those estimate numbers, not quite as big of a price tag.
Anything further, Steve? Jed, do we have any indication from DOT if they'd be willing to pay for and build this 1,600-foot section?
We think that building it is less of a hurdle than maintaining it, is our indications, in terms of funding.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've also, they know we want to write a letter. They're aware of these issues. They
Sure.
think they've kind of done their due diligence. We maybe slightly disagree in terms of squeezing in 5 feet of sidewalk, but they're expecting a letter, and they're, ready to look at it again,
Great.
I guess.
and originally
Heidi, do you mind approaching the mic? If,
sorry.
Yep.
My name's Heidi Van Everen with Whitefish Legacy Partners as well. And originally, the tunnel was planned west of Skiles Lake Lane, and so this wouldn't have been an issue. But because of the right-of-way easements that they struggled with, they ended up having to move it further east, and so then the gap is created. And we have talked to them all along about what solutions, and this project's been in the works for a long time, so the actual, public scoping was, I don't know, 1999, it was a long time ago. So, things are a little bit different, but I don't think they understood the use that we are anticipating and that connectivity there. So their recommendation has been to submit a letter, so it goes informally, to initiate a process for them to look at it and come up with a potential solution.
Councilor Davis.
So just to be clear, the request is simply for a letter. It's not for $300,000. It's just a letter.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Further questions for Jed or Heidi?
John, can we just
Dana?
add a couple things?
Sure.
You have Craig's staff report in the packet, but I do believe whether they are going to require construction costs or not, or maintenance costs or not, they are looking to know if we are going to provide funding. So when you do consider providing direction to write a letter or not, consider that so that staff knows what to include in that letter. From a funding perspective, I will tell you that I don't know where we would get these funds other than the general fund for construction, given, our street maintenance assessment is for city limits. Our sidewalk funds are for sidewalk districts within city limits, so it's hard to come up with where those funding sources should come from. So your general property tax dollars is probably where it would come from. If maintenance is something that Legacy Partners is willing to take on, we could put that in the letter as well. But just I just want to make sure we can articulate, we have no dollars for construction, but we do have the support of Legacy Partners for maintenance or something like that. So
Could we simply submit the letter, requesting their consideration and then address the funding issue at a later time? If they come back with a positive yes?
So MDT in their response to me was pretty specific that they wanted the letter to address both maintenance and funding. The city's willingness to participate in maintenance and funding.
Can we be willing to assist with maintenance but not the actual construction and put that on them? At least for starters?
I think we could. There's clearly a design change here that I think in our opinion requires this from a safety perspective. And so, I think if we at least put ourselves on the hook, for maintaining this section of sidewalk in the future, You know, the goal of the project is to improve pedestrian access to all of these sites, you know,
Right.
along Highway 93 West. And this design change is, you know, taking several of those off the table. So
And the city will be responsible for sidewalk maintenance out to,
not with, so with this trail, MDT will be responsible for
will,
maintaining the
okay.
shared use path. Yeah, because the design was approved and funded prior to MDT's maintenance policy, which
Okay.
was about 6 or 7 years ago. So
which
They are-
we're
they're-
subject to for 93 West, the first 2 phases, correct?
correct.
Yep, okay. Steve?
In terms of maintenance, how would this differ from the money that we're already putting in from the resort tax that's going towards Whitefish Legacy Partners for maintenance? How would that be different?
I think just to clarify, the Whitefish, or the resort tax goes to support the Whitefish Trail operations and maintenance. So that's part of why we're saying we think that there is a solution for maintenance, because that could be something that we could tap into. We also think we could apply for other grants. You know, we don't maintain any sections of paved trails, so that would be different for us. But I think like what Jed was saying is with the East Spencer Trailhead and the Skiles Trailhead, we are doing business out there enough. And so if we have to figure out how to maintain, you know, a quarter mile of shared or, you know, sidewalk, we feel like there's a solution and a funding for the maintenance. You know, if we have to think about construction, we don't have a solution for that, but I think we want to make sure that the letter says that we would like them to consider funding, but that if they need to come back to us, we want to talk about what we could do or how we could do it.
Will the East Spencer trailhead be maintained in the winter in terms of snow plowing, clearing?
That's a determination yet to be made because the site hasn't yet been selected. On the illustration, you see a site that's kind of there are 2 options. This lower option, it's a question of if we have the space there. The other option is that you would go up that road and it's under the power line. We have some concerns that the upper site, maintaining it during the winter would be a little complicated, so undetermined. But this is our primary option,
Okay.
in which case it would be.
Great. I would entertain a motion from council authorizing Craig to draft a letter to DOT to that effect.
Yeah, I would move that we authorize Craig to draft a letter to DOT explaining that we don't have funding for the construction, but we would be responsible. We could find funding for the maintenance.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Craig, any further clarification, or is that clear enough? Dana? Yep.
Could we just clarify that it would be maintenance of the additional 1,600 foot
Yeah.
sidewalk?
That's okay with the second? Okay. Further comments? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Giuseppe, how did you vote?
In the affirmative, yeah.
And that passes unanimously on a 6-0 vote. Heidi, Jed, thanks very much.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, thanks for your time tonight. Thanks, Craig. We're going to move on to communications from the public. We do have numerous public hearings, although we're going to roll those into one this evening or 2. But if you have any comments for the council, now would be your opportunity.
Good evening, Mayor Mulfeld, City Councilors. My name is Kate Berry. I live at 1489 East 2nd Street. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. With consideration to the Whitefish Housing Authority Resident Advisor position that is on your docket for this evening, you will notice, I guess, at the end of your packet, thank you, Jed, that I've got a letter included in there indicating my interest to rejoin the Whitefish Housing Authority. I know that there's another applicant in here as well, who I hope is worthy of consideration as well. I just want to say that I'm really excited about leadership at Whitefish Housing Authority and all of the amazing humans who make up their Board of Commissioners right now. And it'd be an honor to bring my skills and talents back there to help contribute to a lot of really exciting stuff that I think is happening in the realm of affordable housing in our community. So I'd be honored to have your consideration tonight. Thanks for everything you guys do.
Thanks, Kate. Appreciate you showing up tonight. Rachel.
Rachel Schmidt, 675 Woodside Lane. Thank you for passing that last resolution that you guys just passed. I just wanted to mention with regard to that stretch of what will probably be sidewalk, that is a state fishing access. It is listed on the state's website. FWP touts it as a fishing access. Onyx Maps, anywhere you go, like that is a fishing access. It's a killer spot for kids riding their bikes, wanting to chuck a worm out there and fish, right, for our town, especially if there is this sidewalk. So I think definitely this could be like a great collaboration between DOT and FWP and doing some collaboration with LWCF funding or something like that to maybe help that aspect of things. So I think that there could be collaboration. So like, I really do think that they could work to find the funding to do that and improve that little fishing site. So just keep that in mind when you guys are talking with DOT on that, and that I think looping Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in would be very wise. That's my comment.
Great idea. Thanks, Rachel. Daniel.
Mayor and councilors, here representing Housing Whitefish, Daniel Sitter. I'm here to provide an update on the Whitefish Workforce Assistance Program. I'm proud to report that we have been starting to see some real impact from the program. Through 2 application cycles, we've served 38 households for a total of 81 individuals impacted. 36 of those are children. From the application, we've learned that 63% of the applicants are at risk of moving from Flathead County because of their ability to pay rent or utilities. As you know, that would be a devastating loss for our community, as these are the folks checking us in at our dentist appointment, teaching our fitness classes, owning our local coffee shops, watching our children, greeting you at the local downtown businesses, scanning your ski pass, and more. Their desire to live here isn't the issue. 98% of the applicants said they would love to stay in the community long term, and 46% are actively seeking local homeownership opportunities. The issue for them is increasingly they're cost burdened, paying on average 47% of their income on rent alone, not including utilities. So our program is helping these folks continue to live in Whitefish, and while we're building more housing, implementing some different solutions, and deepening our partnerships with key stakeholders. So far we've committed about half of our program budget through the first half of our program year, so just shy of $150,000. The application is currently open, and we are accepting applications through September 15th, so please share with anybody that you think might be eligible. The good news is that we haven't turned anybody away due to lack of funding. And we do anticipate allocating another $75,000 or $85,000 in this next round of applications. We are interested in asking for more money. We haven't allocated all of the money that we have spent yet, so tonight I'm not going to ask for more. Just wanted to let you know that we probably will once we allocate the remaining funds that we have already asked and received from you all. So just wanted to give you an update on that program. Happy to answer any questions you all might have, but happy to see that it's starting to make an impact.
Nice work, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel? Not seeing any. Thanks very much for your work. Further communications from the public? Michelle, anyone online?
For those of you who are online, if you would like to make a comment, please unmute your mic. I think we're good.
Okay, we'll move on to volunteer board reports. We'll start with the council. I think Steve had an update.
This last week, we had our community development board meeting where we got an update from all of the information that came through all the listening sessions. So Alan took all that information and put it into a bunch of different categories, and we have the skeleton of a new growth policy coming into shape now. So over the next year, we'll be fleshing out each chapter and really digging in and doing all the hard work. So if you're available for any of the meetings, we will probably have a work session before each of our meetings on the third Thursday of the month at 5 o'clock, where we will be digging into each different chapter of the new growth policy. So And if you see Alan, give him a big pat on the back. He has done a tremendous job and a lot of work taking things all the way down from sticky notes and putting them into compiling all that information so that we have a really good idea of what vision the community our community has. So that's all.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. Further volunteer board reports from the council? Giuseppe, anything this evening? Okay,
No, thank you. I'm good.
you bet. We'll move on to our consent agenda. You do have the August 5th, 2024 regular meeting minutes, as well as an ordinance lifting stage 1 fire restrictions. Frank,
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and those opposed, like sign, and that's passes on a unanimous vote as well. Thanks, Giuseppe. We will move on to our public hearings this evening. Just so the council's aware, we're going to go ahead and address these items in 2 separate hearings. We'll start with item 7A, which will be resolution 24-28, and then we're going to bundle up the budget, tax levy, and assessments public hearing for resolutions 29 through 39 in one hearing, and I think we can probably consolidate the staff report, Dana, but I'll certainly leave that up to you.
The first public hearing will be Laney with the budget amendments for
Great.
fiscal year 24, and then I'll do the second one.
Thank you. Good evening, Laney.
Good evening, Councilman and Mayor. I'm speaking about the budget amendment for fiscal year 2024. As shown in the staff memo, we have 4 budget amendments to the 2024 fiscal year budget to consider this evening. As required by law, amendments to expenditure budgets are required when spending has exceeded the budget authority provided in the budget document. In each year of the 4 amendments listed here, the available resources of each fund has exceeded the budgetary authority for expenditure, but formal action must be taken on the part of the legislative body to amend the budget authority to apply the available resources. The ARPA funds provided to the city for state and local fiscal recovery as reimbursement for revenue loss expense during COVID were transferred into the general fund, increasing available resources to cover the additional outlay approved by the council for the Depot Park townhomes. In the Parkland Fund, the Library Fund, and the Solid Waste Fund, resources in the form of available fund balance can meet the requirements of the additional budget authority. We are now requesting to amend the budgets of each of these funds from the fund balance. Is there any more questions? You look like you're confused.
Ben, did you have a question?
Oh, I have one whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Could you explain the first one a little more, the 600,000?
Yes, the ARPA funds was from the federal government, and it came to the state, and the state distributed that as state, local, and fiscal recovery. And so we received a reimbursement for our use for towards wages and revenue, like we consider that revenue loss expense. And so that's a reimbursement. And so now that money is in our coffers. And so it was sitting in the ARPA fund, which was 2994. And then we transferred that to the general fund after paying out all of those wages, et cetera, during COVID. And so now we have that available as resources to put towards the Depot townhouses.
So we committed, I believe it was $2 million of ARPA funds, and that's all we're doing, right? This is just an accounting thing?
So the expenditure was budgeted in it's just an accounting thing. The expenditures were budgeted in the 2994 fund, not out of the general fund, but when we took the 2.1 million as revenue loss, that money was recorded in our fiscal year 23 financials as covering wages and expenses for general government services. So we're actually, quote unquote, spending down fund balance now for the general fund, but it was fund balance that was released from the ARPA funds. And so because we're making payments to the Housing Authority now, this is how much they've actually drawn down by June 30th. That wasn't budgeted in the general fund, it was budgeted in a different fund. So just to make sure that our budget matches what we've done from a financial perspective with help from our auditors, because they combined the ARPA fund and general fund. If you were to look at our financials externally, they're one fund. This is really just to help us make sure we have the clear budget authority.
Further questions for Laney or Dana? Steve?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Giuseppe?
I'll wait for Steve. I'll ask after Steve. Thank you.
What is the solid waste? Is that something to do with Republic Services?
Yes, so it was more of it was an increase in the costs of our solid waste contract. When we had budgeted, we weren't quite sure the bear cart rollout. It was an estimate. Our expenditures are in that fund. So we did overspend. That fund continues to struggle. We will be looking in the budget as we get to fiscal year 25 budget. While we won't be setting the rate increase, we will be looking for a rate increase. They are increasing, that contract increases the fees 3.25% every year.
Okay, thank you.
Giuseppe?
Yes, I'm looking at page 160 of the PDF. And in that page, there is a item project list with revenue changes and expenditure changes. My question is about the process at this point. Are we approving at this point in time or acknowledging those changes, or those are already within the budget authority?
So what page you're looking at is within the fiscal year 25 budget. What we're talking about is amending fiscal year's 24 budget. So last year's budget, where we ended up spending more than the budget authority but we had contracts in place essentially that were approved by council to expend those funds though.
Okay, so is there an item on the agenda that will cover those changes for budget of 25, or this is out of the scope tonight? Because I'm a little confused.
I think I got to the wrong number. What page are you on the packet?
I think it's 160.
160, and there are
And that's the
revenue
street,
changes.
the street fund?
What? I see increase in personal services due to wage study, $12,000. Decrease in professional services. It's a number of different items.
Yeah.
Capital improvement, Birch Point Quiet Zone, $300,000. So I was just trying to stitch the two ends together, because we might have approved it in different meetings, or are we going to approve those changes tonight?
So this item, we will be looking at the fiscal year 25 budget here after this public hearing, but we're talking about the staff report on page 37 of the packet, if that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for Dana or Laney? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be ordinance 24-28. We'll hold that public hearing now. Any public comment online, Michelle?
Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak towards FY24 budget amendments. We're good.
Go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council. Andy?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve resolution number 24-28. It's a resolution amending our 2024 fiscal annual budget to increase appropriations in 4 specific funds.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Giuseppe. Thank you, Laney. We'll move on to what will be item 7B, our FY25 budget, tax levy and assessments public hearing. And again, we're going to roll resolutions 29-39 into one hearing and one staff report. And I'll turn it over to Dana.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to present to you the final fiscal year 25 budget. We received our taxable value from the Department of Revenue on August 5th. And with that, our taxable value grew by 2.47% from last year. When you dive into the details of that increase, there was a portion for newly taxable, but that was offset slightly by a decrease based on protested valuations. You may hear that other communities are struggling with their taxable values they've received. Kalispell, I talked to their city manager. He feels that their increase was within where they thought it would be. I feel like ours was as well, but some communities are seeing a decrease in their taxable value this year, even with newly taxable property, because the state did make changes last year after the certified taxable value was issued regarding townhomes. So Bozeman, Gallatin County, Billings, you name it, they all have seen decreases. And so we're lucky that we didn't face that. More to come there, I'm sure. The state was not able to get to all of the newly taxable property like they did to us a few years ago, but I feel like they're on track now here. So with that though, our mill value is increasing from about $79,000 a mill to about $81,000 a mill. And just before we get into the tax increase discussion, which we have gone over during multiple work sessions and the prior preliminary budget adoption, is that, we have provided relief to property taxpayers in the form of reduced levies and assessments over the past 5 years. We did have 1 year where we had a slight increase, but that was decreased even further the subsequent year. We're lucky to have a considerable amount of carryover mills, which really resulted from the city's tax increment financing district sunsetting. Growth in our investment earnings has helped with our ability to reduce property taxes, and also our growth in our taxable value, so new property that has been developed. Based on the preliminary budget and direction given at work sessions, we did increase property tax mills. The preliminary budget projected 7.75. We did add 1 mill to make sure that all positions at the city are adjusted to at least 90% of market for wages, as we've had lagging wages compared to the market over the past few years, even though we have given more sizable raises than we had in the past. Our property tax relief from resort tax has decreased as well, and I'll get into that soon. 8.75 mills, though, results in about 21% increase in our property tax revenue for the city. But of those 8.75 mills, 2.52 mills is due to the decrease in property tax relief. So as property tax relief goes down, the number of mills actually go up because you've removed that rebate. So we actually will be levying a total, the remaining 6.23 from the 8.75 though was necessary to fund wages, keep up with other operating costs. We also have the local government review this year, which with their budget is equivalent to 0.27 mills. But as we continue to see success in our investment strategy and working with our local banking partners, we do have a significant amount of additional revenues that are projected in this budget to keep those mills low. But it's important to know, as we actually face a likely Fed cut in the rates coming up soon, that these rates can decrease and rapidly at times, just as they rapidly increase. So I want to be clear that this does not mean just because we're doing an increase this year that we won't do increases in the future. As that revenue changes, we will have to adjust to that. And that's just the nature of when you're trying to ease the burden on taxpayers. The value of, or the 8.75 mil increase for residential properties valued at $800,000 is roughly $94.54 a year, or $7.88, $7.88 per month. I don't know if you've read the Daily Interlake, but we didn't make the headline. We did make a side column, but Kalispell is seeing a higher increase based on their voted levy that was passed. Maintenance assessments are recommended to increase generally by the CPI that we had. This year it was 3.6%, but for this budget year, given the tax increase, we are not increasing assessments this year. They will remain at the same rate. If you do see revenue increases within the budget, that is simply due to the new properties being added to the assessments, so new developments that are now subject to those. Resort tax collections for fiscal year '24 were $44,000 less than expected, but that shortfall was offset by a higher than expected investment earnings. And so our property tax relief will see a decrease of about $150,000. It's 5.97% of what decrease compared to the prior year. So total property tax relief, though, will still be about $2.28 million, and we'll be reducing mills by 28.13 mills compared to the 30.654 mills last year. Fund balance, we are still sitting with a fund balance of about 40.14% in our property tax supported funds. That is down from the prior year of 45.6%, but that is really due to large capital purchases. I was being very cautious to make sure that the spend down of reserves was not for wage increases, because to be able to sustain that over time can be very difficult. Specifically when we're facing potential challenges at the legislative session. The property tax task force of the governors came out with their final report to the governor regarding changes that they're recommending to local government tax structures and statewide. The first one statewide is actually pretty positive for Whitefish and wouldn't impact us, but it would be taxing non-resident homes or short-term rental homes at a higher rate than long-term rental and primary resident homes. I think that's something council's been interested, and it also addresses small commercial versus large commercial. This is important from a perspective of just, equity in our community. But again, it has to go through the legislature to pass. So that actually doesn't impact us, but ones that do impact us is they will get rid of our carry forward mills. That is one of the recommendations, is to not allow us to recapture. Basically, we have been very diligent in our taxing, and we could have levied over 30 more mills, but we did not because we were being very cautious on the tax burden of our community members. So they would be penalizing communities that have actually taken the effort to not use their full authority by state law by removing those. They're also proposing some changes on how newly taxable property is accounted with some offsets with population growth. Population growth for Whitefish is okay during an annexation, but if you think about second homes in Whitefish as we grow, if they are more second homes, population is not growing at that same rate, so that could be negative. There are some other changes that they're proposing regarding voted levies that would not impact our current voted levy since that was already voted. But it's important to know these changes are coming because to decrease what we're already proposing for tax revenue could put us in a pickle, so to speak. And then that's why the fund balance portion is important right now, because as we look to next year when values could come down, if our market rates come down because in December of '22 we had a high, and as the feds are reducing rates and maybe more supplies coming on and we actually have a decrease in value, and we aren't able to use our carryover mills to recapture some of that funding, we're gonna need to be able to use some reserves for operating costs potentially. Not something I'd recommend, but it's basically a safety net we have, So I'll get off that topic. More to come on that, though. We do have in this budget a lobbyist to help us through this legislative session, though. Capital improvements, you do have the CIP for consideration later this evening, but we are, for fiscal year '25, projecting to increase our capital spending by about $3.1 million. Most of that's due to the South Water Storage and Production project ramping up and our resort tax funded street projects. Our capital and property tax supported funds is set to decrease by about $74,000 from the prior year, pretty much due to us having the police car. We had 2 last year, and this year we only have 1. City personnel, we've talked about this. We are adding no new positions this year as we're trying to adjust wages to market. We would typically see about a 3.5% pay increase given the caps that we had. However, given the study completed by CMS and the need to retain employees to ensure we continue to deliver exceptional service to our community, we do have an 8.5% pay increase for most employees. That includes a 5% market rate adjustment, a cost of living adjustment of 1.5%. Keep in mind, CPI was 3.6. And a 2% step, or often would be referred to as longevity, on our pay matrix. We have budgeted additional funds to accommodate classifications for positions that aren't at 90% with that 8.5% increase. For non-union positions, we also have firefighters who will be receiving an additional market rate adjustment to get them to 90%. And then the only positions that we will not be at 90% is our AFSCME, our Public Works Union. But we do recognize that wages for these positions need to be increased. So they are going to receive an 8.5% increase as described earlier. They are funded though mostly through maintenance assessments, but water and sewer rates as well. And so the risk of property taxes is not as significant for this upcoming legislative session. Health insurance costs have gone up about 11.2% for fiscal year 25. The Health Insurance Committee is continuing to look at are there options out there. I think we'll find that health insurance is just very costly regardless of where you go, but we do split this between the city and employees. Let's see here. I'm going to make this a little more quicker for you guys. Overall, I think that we've done a good job balancing this budget, maintaining cash reserves for future known needs. Also have funded most of our capital projects with cash or grants. The only one that we do have a loan still pending on is the wastewater treatment plant. Very small amount that we'll continue to draw down on, but that's been planned for a while. So this budget was created based on city council goals and input. I've provided for you changes that we've made since the preliminary budget. They're listed out here. You can read through them. If you have any questions, I am happy to answer them. But I would like to express my gratitude to all of our directors, Lainey especially, the council, and all the staff that has also helped put this together this year. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dana. Any questions for Dana on the FY25 budget? Not seeing any. We did advertise for our FY25 budget tax levy and assessments, which will be resolutions 24-29 through 24-39. Any public comment tonight online? Michelle?
Those online, if you have anything to say towards the budget, please unmute your mic. We're good.
I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion, please. Ben? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were raising your hand. Andy?
I would make a motion that we approve resolutions 24-29 through 24-39, which are all of the resolutions that allow us to tax, levy, and assessments for our fiscal 25-year budget.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Davis. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your...
Mr. Mayor,
Excuse me?
Mr. Mayor,
We'll hold the vote. Giuseppe?
sorry, for the sake of discussion, I'd like to offer an amendment to this process. I'd like to propose that we postpone 1 year the capital improvement for the viaduct of $700,000. That is an additional expenditure change.
Could you repeat that, please, Giuseppe?
Yes, within the final draft of the 25 budget, in the capital improvement area, there is an expenditure change of $700,000 for the already discussed viaduct improvement. So for the sake of discussion at least, I'd like to move to postpone that expense to next year.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment. Is there a second? And that motion fails for lack of a second, Giuseppe. Which brings us back to our original motion for approval. Further discussion?
I'm just going to
Andy.
make one comment. I think it's pretty amazing with growth in taxable value, growth in the size of the city, and with reappraisal, how in 3 years, literally, a value of a mill has doubled. And we went from 40,000 in 2021 to 81,000 today. So, yeah, just kind of an amazing number. And I'll just speak really quickly to Giuseppe. I would not have seconded your motion simply because I just watched a pack of e-bikes, which seems to be the new thing in town, on sidewalks, family with stroller, trying to get over the viaduct, and an older couple walking, and it was right at the top of the viaduct on the east side, and it was a total cluster, and I'm surprised no one was killed. So as far as I'm concerned, the faster we can fix the viaduct, the better off we are.
All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. That was in favor, Giuseppe, just for the record.
Absolutely, it was.
Thank you. There's a bit of a video delay, so we'll move on. Thanks very much, Dana, and all directors for that matter. We'll move on to item 8, communications from Maria Butts, our Parks and Rec Director, for consideration to authorize the Board of Park Commissioners to accept the very gracious Warnow land donation. Maria.
Good evening. Billy Wortnow is a longtime owner of a large parcel of land that is along JP Road, but is outside of the city limits. Her parcel extends across the Whitefish River, adjacent to Riverwood Park. And over the years, she has observed people accessing the river from her property. Likely, we're assuming that they think that is parkland. She recognizes that this section of land would be a significant amenity for the community and would complete the Riverwood Park parcel. She has committed to donating the land to the city for the use of a public river access point. In your packet, there's an image that identifies the boundary lines of each of the properties. In red is the Wortnow property. In blue is the Riverwood property as it stands today. And then the blue hatched section represents the portion that she would like to donate. Our city code states that the park board shall have the power, upon receiving approval from the city council, to acquire real property. And during the park board's August meeting, the board voted to request that the city council authorize them to move forward with this land donation. They also voted to honor the generous donation by naming the donated area Wortnow Landing. The financial requirement for this would be $6,050 anticipated, and that would be paid through the Parks Fund. That's for a survey and boundary line adjustment. So I'm happy to answer questions, but I, along with the Park Board of Commissioners, respectfully recommend that the council authorize the Park Board to accept the Wortnow land donation as an extension of the existing Riverwood Park.
Thanks, Maria. Any questions for Maria on this item? Ben?
No,
Motion would be great.
I would move
Mr.
to authorize.
Mayor, I so move.
I would move authorize the Board of Park Commissioners to accept the Wortnow land donation.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second it.
Seconded by Giuseppe. Further discussion?
I would just say thank you to Ms. Wortnow for donating this on behalf of the community, and I look forward to visiting it in the future.
Marie, would you mind drafting a letter on behalf of the council? Thank you letter for that matter.
Absolutely.
That would be appreciated. We can sign it at the next meeting.
I would be glad to.
Thanks very much. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I just interject one thing here?
Yeah.
The Park Board was also very interested in this and very thankful for this donation. In your letter from the council, could you reference the Park Board's
Absolutely.
appreciation as well?
Most certainly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. We'll move on to item 9, communications from our finance director. Review and adoption of the FY25 through FY29 CIP. Lainey.
Okay, let's see if I can be a little clearer this time. All right, the capital improvement plan that's up for approval this evening is a 5-year plan that spans from fiscal year 2025 to 2029. This plan enables the city to establish and improve needed infrastructure to provide city services and plan for growth. In addition, this is the document that establishes the city is complying with state code requirements, particularly in the area of impact fees, but also for lenders and grantors to see the city's plans for sources of matching funds and/or sources of loan repayment. As described in the CIP document prepared for your approval, to be considered, a capital expenditure is a capital asset purchase that must be $5,000 or more and have a useful life of greater than 1 year. And a capital improvement project must cost $5,000 or more and should extend the useful life of the asset or result in the asset being in like-new condition or upgraded to improve efficiency, quality, strength, or capacity. During the development of the fiscal year budget, the CIP is used as a tool to determine which capital project should be included and what funds can be appropriated, as well as which projects will be carried over into the next fiscal year to move the project forward towards completion. The 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan reflects 104 projects totaling approximately $57,256,000. In fiscal year 25, there are 33 projects slated for funding totaling approximately $13,452, with water, wastewater, and street projects funded by resort tax making up about 55% of the capital as compared to 75% of the 5-year plan. Several projects are carried over to subsequent fiscal years in a rolling capacity as weather, manpower, supply chain, and funding can often dictate progress on a given project. Fiscal year 2025 is no exception, with several carryovers from fiscal year 24. As mentioned in the program funding goals portion of the CIP document, water and sewer user fees primarily fund improvements to these utilities and/or the debt service associated with these improvements. There are no rate increases anticipated in fiscal year 25. However, the rate model was updated in 2019, and rates have remained flat since that update. So a new rate review will be completed in the spring of 2025 to ensure that operations and maintenance costs of each system, as well as debt service, can be covered by user fees with as minimal an impact on the consumer as possible. In fiscal year 2025, the Haskell Basin Conservation Easement Project debt will be paid, freeing up resources for capital improvement and capital purchases to be allocated according to the vote of the electorate to redistribute resort tax. The reallocation results in 48% of the 3% that can be used for maintenance, repair, and improvement of streets, storm sewers, sidewalks, curbs, and the like. 10% for improvements and maintenance of bicycle and pedestrian paths and other parks acquisitions, capital improvements, and equipment. 10% for community housing projects and programs, and 2% for the Whitefish Trail improvements, with the remainder going to property tax relief and the collection and administration of the resort tax. An expansion of the use of resort tax to include maintenance and repair has allowed for more projects to which resort tax dollars can be applied. As this is a living document that changes with the priorities of the community, project progress is monitored each year and updates to the plan are made to accommodate changing needs of the community and to address economic factors that may impact additional funding options. The staff respectfully submits the 25 to 29 capital improvement plan to be approved with a fiscal year 25 budget.
Thanks, Lainey. Any questions for Lainey on her staff report or the CIP? Frank.
We ready for a motion?
Please.
I would move to approve our capital improvements program as presented.
Thank you, Frank. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Cornell. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. Thanks, Giuseppe, and that motion does carry unanimously as well. Thanks very much, Laney. You have Dana's report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana on her manager's report? Dana, anything additional to report on?
You know, we're still almost done with summer here, but we've had a lot of great special events in town and, received some great comments about our Parks and Recreation Department, specifically Steve Murphy, Philip, and Jenny, and I think they deserve to be recognized. The work that they do to coordinate our events in Depot Park and other locations is fantastic, and also all of our other staff that helps out with those. So it's been a busy summer, but they continue to do a fantastic job and really represent our city well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dana. And thank you to those individuals. We'll move on to item 11, communications from the mayor and city councilors. I do have an appointment to make, and I would motion with ratification, please, to appoint Kate Berry to the Whitefish Housing Authority to complete the term ending 12/31/2024, and just a showing of hands to ratify that appointment. Andy? Yep, okay. And that's unanimous, Michelle. And we'll start this evening with Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, council. As Dana just mentioned, summer is coming to a close, and next week we will be welcoming students back into the classrooms here. And they have some important stuff that they're talking about over at the high school tonight about the reconstruction of the high school and the bond and the levy that they are trying to pass. So I hope everyone is engaged and interested in that process as well, because that will represent a significant increase in our property taxes if both of those pass. Please make sure you're well educated on what the cost is and what we're going to get for that cost over there. But do want to just always, as school gets back in, remember there's going to be a lot more kids out there in the mornings and the afternoons, and traffic's going to be pretty ugly over in certain parts of town in the mornings and afternoons. But as a teacher, it's a bittersweet moment at this time of year. Looking forward to meeting some new students, and I'm also beginning to mourn the loss of my freedom again as well. So.
Hope you had a good summer.
It was a great one. Thanks.
Good. Thanks, Steve. Frank?
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to bring something to the council's attention that I think needs some further discussion. It's become apparent to those of us on the park board that there apparently is a little bit of a conflict that's developed between the Twins and their use of Memorial Field and the high school and their ability to use that for their baseball program. And I would like your endorsement to put together a group. I would volunteer for it for sure as a member of both council and the park board, to include a couple of members of the park board, to meet with the Twins and with the high school and to see if we can't come to some mutually satisfactory agreement on how they can share the use of that field for both their benefits. And if with your endorsement, I'd like to work with Maria to get that to take place in the next month or so.
Sounds good to me. Council okay with that? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, Maria, thanks.
Ben?
Well, I would start by noting that I saw we had 6 applicants for the Government Study Commission. I wanted to thank those who applied. I think that's a healthy number of applicants, so glad to see it. I hope something productive comes from it. I wanted to offer a few comments on our work session earlier today. I'll start with the short-term rentals. I'm not entirely surprised that the numbers aren't quite as high as we thought. However, it seems like good progress is being made, and I think it seems clear that there are now potentially dozens of homes that are not short-term rentals that we're trying to be illegally. So I think we should continue doing what we're doing, in my opinion. I'm perfectly happy going after the low and medium hanging fruit without trying to kill ourselves going after the really hard ones. And it's early, and hopefully those results continue in the future. That's my opinion. To shift to our second part of our work session, which is about the Legacy Homes program, I would say the first thing is with respect to the, I call it the fourth story non-combustible requirement, or the top floor being non-combustible, to me feels like a bit of a no-brainer. And we have fire codes that are designed and written by professionals. I think it's a little peculiar to have zoning ordinances overriding fire codes in this way, and I think, in my opinion, I think we could leave that issue to the professionals that write the codes, rather than complicating projects in that way. The second thing I would say is I would reiterate the point that I made in there, that I think the Legacy Homes program seems to work in some circumstances with apartments, but it does not work with other types of projects. And I think we've had a lot of apartment projects get built in the valley and that are also approved. And so, you know, looking into the future, we may not have as many apartment projects in the future. And I think it would be potentially worth the time to go back and look at the Legacy Homes program and say, how can we get this to work better for ownership opportunities? That would be in particular subdivisions. And I think it would need a different incentive structure that is tailored to those types of development applications. That's my thought. But it seems like a good task that this council could assign to the housing committee. Because I think it's going to take some debate to figure that out, and I think it'll be a lot more streamlined to put it there. Just a thought. I am still wary of ramping up cash in lieu. I just still am concerned about our ability to effectively use the money. However, I'm not married to that. If other folks feel we could use more money in the coffers, especially if the deed in lieu, or the cash in lieu amounts are sufficiently high that it works in our favor, then I could live with it. But I still feel kind of wary of it, and I think that in general we still should prioritize units. That's just my feeling. But anyway, hopefully everybody's had a great summer. So thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Rebecca.
Yep. The first one is we got kind of a colorful letter from Cynthia Becker about noise out at the airport. First thing, everybody should know that we are nonpartisan. So we're not making decisions up here, Republicans or Democrats. She had the assumption that because we might be Democrats, we made certain decisions, and that's not true. And the other thing is, I was just wondering, what is the authority over the airport with noise levels? How does someone actually submit a complaint if someone is like the city has a noise ordinance from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., but does the airport have any authority that people can report a complaint to? Does anybody know that?
I think you'd file a complaint to the Aeronautics Division of the Montana Department of Transportation, if I'm not mistaken. At least for the jump operation, which is what this letter referenced.
Okay, thanks.
It's a commercial jump operation that's not licensed through the city of Whitefish.
Is it for jumping out of the plane?
Yes, that's the plane you hear
Okay.
from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday and Sunday.
Wow, okay. So I just wanted to put that on the public record, since we've had some public testimony about noise out there at the last meeting. And then I wanted to ask Angie, hi Ange, if you wanted to do any litigation updates about like the McIntyre lawsuit, or wondered if the impact fee settlement was signed and.
We do those in executive session, Rebecca.
Okay, sorry.
I prefer to hold those for an executive session.
Good night, Ange.
Not good. Thanks, Rebecca. Andy?
Only one thing, and it refers to my earlier comment about what I saw on the viaduct. And I think, and it's mostly all rental e-bikes, and now that we have a couple of venues that are renting them, and there are large packs and pods of people, 6, 8 at a time, and they're using the sidewalks in downtown, and they're zipping along on their e-bikes, and it's particularly along Baker Avenue. I watched a whole string go through, and someone almost got run over as they went across 4th Street there. They went across 4th from the credit union and almost get killed running in, somebody turning into the post office. And kind of wondering if from the Parks Department, maybe Maria or somewhere, or Bridger, I don't know, maybe from you guys, just send a letter to the e-bike people and just tell them when they're renting bikes, maybe have a little thing that says e-bikes are not allowed on city sidewalks, they're allowed on shared paths and bike paths, but not on city sidewalks within the central part of the community. Because they're gonna get smoked, I'll tell you. It's people are not paying attention, and there are like 6 or 8 people at a time, and they're all going 20 miles an hour in the parking, on the sidewalks, and it's gonna be a problem, so that's all.
It is a problem, yeah. Thanks, Andy. I just had a few minor items. Just a reminder that because of the Labor Day holiday, our next meeting will be on a Tuesday, September 3rd. Another reminder about our council retreat, which is scheduled for September 14th, I believe, at the Lodge, Michelle? Grouse Mountain, excuse me. So Grouse Mountain, September 14th. And then Craig, real briefly, do we have an update on the Birch Point project?
I think there was an update in Dana's manager's report, being a council goal, but yeah, ultimately, right now, we're stalled between BNSF and MDT trying to determine how much, if any, they're gonna fund for this safety project, and I just can't get either of them off center. We have the project designed, we have our cost estimate, and I just need to know how much of this project they're gonna kick in, so we can determine whether or not to move it forward. But at this point, it hasn't been nominated by MDT as a project, so there's not been
So
a whole lot of
unlikely
progress.
this year?
Correct.
Okay, I'll pass that along. Thanks very much. I think that's all I had. Anything further from staff tonight, Dana?
Yeah, I actually just had
Just,
one.
Councilor
Oh, yeah,
comment?
Giuseppe.
Giuseppe, I'm sorry. Before we go to you, Craig.
Well, my first comment was thank you for your patience, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and audience. I apologize that a couple of times I'm attending remotely, but I'm trying to serve as best as I can. And the second one is selfish and personal. I want to congratulate a member of our community and a servant to some boards in the city, Doug Reed, in his wedding anniversary. He's, I know, in a secret place with his wife celebrating. And he shares the date of the wedding anniversary with my wife and mine. So I want to wish Roxy, who is at home away from me and vice versa, a happy first anniversary. Thank you for coping with me, Roxy, and you all, the city council.
Happy anniversary, Giuseppe. Craig.
Yeah, I just want to mention, it's been kind of a month of donations, apparently. I also want to give a shout out to Stack Financial Management, who donated a rather expensive, very complicated generator to the city of Whitefish. It's a 3-phase, 277-volt generator that we'll actually be able to use at a number of our different lift stations. It was something they purchased when they built their new building over there in Wisconsin and decided to go with a different generator, and did kind of a survey of possible users throughout the valley, and the city of Whitefish came out on top. So thank you very much to Jim and Lisa Stack, and I will also, if you don't mind, draft a letter
Please.
thanking them for your signature at the next meeting.
That'd be great. Thanks, Jim and Lisa. Thanks, Craig. Anything further from council? On that note, we are adjourned. Thanks.